Hello my friends, I'm Bianca, the ticking time blonde. Guys, we have a special edition today with another international guest, Ignatius, all the way from Singapore. Welcome to the set, Ignatius.
Thanks, Bianca. Hey guys.
So not only you are a watch enthusiast, but I do believe you are in the watch industry.
Yeah, I am. Funny story, I think, really, because I'm not that far down sort of my watch collecting hobby anyways. I started maybe 4 years ago, and it's been a really steep, really slippery slope since then. I think, going back to the beginning, I really only got into it because, well, I was shopping for a birthday present for my father, actually.
Lovely.
Because he used to collect watches back in the day, and he stopped for a while. So I figured, for his 60th, why not get him something? In doing the research and sort of snooping around, shopping around for that, and digging into, mechanical watches as a whole, that really kind of sparked something in me.
And curiosity.
Curiosity in, well, not just how it works, but also, how the watches are made, but also the craft that goes into many of them. So I started out with a bunch of micro brands, really, and then Singapore's a great spot for that because you've got so many brand owners living in that one place. So I had lots of early touch points, and I guess maybe that accelerated everything. Made quite a few friends who were brand owners in their own right, running sort of small boutique micro brands. In and around that process, I stumbled across Atelier Wen, the brand that I ended up working for. I loved their initial release, but I completely missed the boat with the release of I think the Porcelain Odyssey, Porcelain Dials. It just so happened that they were releasing Perception, their second collection, around the time I graduated from my master's, and I thought, you know what, why not sort of commit for that and get that to commemorate graduation. Got to know the founders in the process, got to know the community, and started getting way too involved for my own good, I think. My background is in writing. One of the founders, Robin, reached out and asked if I could help with writing the manual for Perception.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was my audition, so to speak, and then I haven't looked back.
So I do believe last night you attended a Perth watch meetup.
Yeah.
How does it compare to, say, one in Singapore?
I have to say, last night was wonderful. There's a degree of warmth in the Perth community that, honestly, I think it's hard to find anywhere else. Perth has a bit of a reputation for being the sleepier sort of cousin
Yes.
on the Australian landmass. That was kind of what I expected coming here. But I have to say, it's been quite lively. And also, the fact that, you guys have managed to mobilize such a strong, welcoming watch community here, I think that's really, really cool because it's not something I've really experienced all too much. Like back home in Singapore, you have your groups. You have quite a lot of groups actually because it's just so dense. There's almost too many groups such that you don't have this collective whole. So people tend to hang out with the same guys, same crowd. And then in terms of actually sort of mobilizing the entire community and bringing people together, that doesn't really happen all too often. We have the big watch fairs. Outside of those, it's usually just very ad hoc, very impromptu get-togethers. And it's not so much like, let's get 30, 40, 50 people in a room, maybe more sometimes, I think, to just hang out, talk watches and enjoy and have a good time.
So you were saying that, your curiosity with watch collecting started with purchasing a watch for your dad's 60th. At what point did you make your first purchase and the story behind that?
I'm not super sentimental about my pieces. Well, at least not the early ones. Because at that point, I think I was just dabbling. So, my first purchase was a random sort of $100 Citizen that I don't have anymore. I let it go pretty quickly, actually, because I realized, it's cool, but there's so much cooler stuff out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it lasted 3 months with me, actually. I started where everybody does, I think, or almost everybody does, with your Seikos, your Citizens, maybe a Tissot here and there. When you first start on your journey, you're not really sure what kind of watches you like. I'm still not sure I know. Looking at the collection later, I'm still not sure I know what I like. But I think what really kind of made it so easy to let go of the early pieces was because, again, that was around the time I found that local sort of collective of brand owners. And you had brands like Zelos, Mitch Mason, RZE, Ferrio, a few of these sort of local micro brands. You meet one and they introduce you to another, and you start sort of really getting to know the people behind the brands. The thing is, I think with micro brands, what's cool is they don't really have a fixed sort of DNA of design to stick to. They can kind of go out, do their own thing, and there's going to be, sort of a pool of people somewhere who will like what they produce if it's sort of well thought through, well put together. I started making friends with the brand owners. I started buying some of their pieces. There's this one micro brand. I didn't bring in the watch with me because I actually gifted it to my brother. That was probably my earliest touch point in this industry. It's a brand called Mitch Mason, based in Singapore. He's recently, I think, announced a return with a new release after, I think, a year and a half or 2 years of break. I still have his pieces till today because I kind of see that as really the beginning.
Now, Ignatius, I have presented you with a 3-watch collection challenge, so I'm very fortunate that you did bring 3 over from Singapore.
Yeah.
Where would you like to start, and would you like to just tell me a little bit about your collection?
Of course. I think we can start with the one on the right. I'll pick it up, yeah. Well, this is a sort of really dainty small piece. This is a Chronoswiss, 1985, I believe. This was a little bit of an impulse purchase, I will say. Part of me kind of always wanted a skeletonized piece in my collection. I think with this watch, I mean, what really, really won me over were the lugs. So you have these little sort of dainty, almost like jelly bean looking lugs. Don't know what the lugs specifically are called. I chanced upon this on a German auction site, just completely randomly one day. And I knew, well, it's a really small piece, so I was kind of hesitant at first. But I do have really skinny Asian wrists, so
you can get away with it.
I can still get away with something smaller. I think this is 30 millimeters, really, really slim. And the skeletonization is really nicely done with sort of engraving on all the bridges and whatnot. So I decided to pull the trigger. It's a piece that I've had a mixed relationship with. Okay. I don't wear it as often as I should probably, but at the same time, I found letting it go quite difficult as well, because I think it sort of adds something a little bit different to the collection. A random bunch, I would say. Yeah.
So is this your only skeletonized dial in your collection?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It is. I sort of held out for a really long time because I don't think skeletonization is always done in a sort of very well thought through manner. I think you have a lot of brands who basically just sort of hack holes into the bridges and, well, it looks nice, but you can kind of also tell that something missing. Yeah. And with this one, when I saw the photos, I kind of hesitated for a bit because of the size, but I knew just from the look of the skeletonization that I kind of really wanted it. I haven't really been able to find out much about this watch really, because I think back in the day, Chronoswiss used to make, 500 pieces a year maybe? They were known, I think Gerber was known for being the inventor of the regulator dial. Most of the pieces that have a sort of a historical record, I think tend to be linked to that or linked to certain complications that he worked with. I've maybe found one other example of this specific model on Instagram in somebody's collection. Okay. Yeah, but other than that, all I've been able to piece together it was made in 85. I don't know whether skeletonization is done by themselves, but yeah, I mean, I think that just adds to the whole allure of the watch.
And do you find, obviously the watch space is quite small, but do you find having that large leather bracelet on the back of the watch makes it more wearable?
Yeah, the bun strap, I think, so I received this bun strap as a gift along with, because when I bought an Oris from a friend, it just so happens that they fit because the diameter of the strap is, I think, 16. Most days, I think this is the only way I get to wear this out because it adds a little bit more presence to the wrist. Otherwise, it's really, really dainty. The only times I take it off is, sometimes when I have to throw on a suit and then I put it on black leather and it's a dressier piece.
Yeah, for sure.
But for day-to-day wear, it's usually on this.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing your story behind your skeletonized dial.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at your second watch.
Sure. So this one's a story and a half, I think.
Well, do tell.
This is actually a workshop piece, firstly, that I kind of worked on myself. But it was a workshop piece done with a very special watchmaker by the name of Paul Gerber. He's not, I think, a super well-known name in the industry or to the collecting community at large, just because he's really kept to himself. He hasn't really marketed his brand or his name too much. But I would dare to suggest, I think, that he's one of the most talented watchmakers in the world, really, because he was one of the early members of the AHCI. I think he used to develop lots of complicated movements for various brands, which I think he's never really been able to reveal. One thing that he's had on his resume is he holds 2 Guinness records for the world's smallest mechanical wooden clock.
Wow.
And also, I can't remember the name. It was maybe the Superbia Humanitatis or something.
Okay.
Which was essentially the most complicated watch on top of, I think, a Frank Muller base that he did just executed over years for one particular customer or client of his. This watch was made in Zurich in November 2023, last year. I flew there with a friend to sort of, work on my own watch for 4 days. I do believe it's maybe one of the only workshops, if not the only workshop in the world, where you sort of get to finish your own movement. I came out of that with a whole new level of respect for, watchmakers and what they do, and how impossible it is really to finish it to the standards that they do. You don't see it here, but the sides of all my plates, because he actually touched it up a little bit for me. If you look into the sort of little crevices, you might see a few scratches here and there, because when you do the anglage, your hand slips and you damage the movement. Yeah,
sometimes does happen.
I mean, this is basically what they do day in, day out, and finish it to an absolutely insane degree. I think this was probably I would say the best experience of my collecting journey so far. I'm just going there and making this watch, learning how movement works first and foremost, and spending time with Paul and his wife. His workshop's actually built into his garage. So it's this really humble experience of stepping into a watchmaker's home. You open the garage door and you see his CNC machine there. I think he has a frosting machine, and then the workshop itself is built into one of the rooms of his house, I want to say.
Okay.
I would love to do it over again.
So would you say this was the watch that really sparked that appreciation for the horology?
As far as movement making goes, yeah. Because, before that, I think, generally speaking, you look at a nice movement, look at any of the big independents, or even like a Patek or an AP, and you look at the movement and you're like, oh, this is beautifully finished. It's a really nice, it's nice anglage, it's nice striping, it's nice snailing, but it's always from a point of removal, a position of appreciation, but not appreciation in the sense that, oh, you've actually tried your hand at it, you've actually realized that this is not just somebody sitting there and moving their hand up and down for hours on end. It's also that, it's a lot of perseverance, actually quite strenuous, bent over the desk, controlling your movements so finely. And before that, I think it was confined mainly to, sort of things on the surface, mainly the dial, design first and foremost, but also things like your high crafts, so enameling, porcelain, guilloche, micropainting, stuff like that. But I think this workshop was what really awakened me to the movement side of things, how difficult it is to, take even just a simple time-only movement and finish it to a really, really high degree.
So what's the third piece in your collection?
Yeah, so the 3-watch collection, I think, will be completed with what's on my wrist, really. If the micro brands and those watches were what began the journey, I think this is really what took it to a different level, because this was the watch that I purchased for my graduation. And this was the watch that, basically wound up getting me a job.
So very sentimental.
It is. Usually it's on a steel bracelet or rubber strap. This was a custom alligator leather strap that I did with a local crafter in Singapore. But basically this is the perception. I think really the one thing that I think sort of sold the watch to me, and I think that's what most people would say, is the fact that it was offering a guilloche dial at a really, really, an unreal price point at that point. You have your brands like Breguet, I think AP, of course, with a tapisserie dial, and then, some of the really high-end independents. But those watches are in the tens of thousands. And I think as a fresh graduate at that point, I was like, I'm not in a position to spend that kind of money on a watch. So it just so happened that they released Perception in and around that time. And it ticked a lot of boxes, I would say, because I think integrated bracelet sports watches were coming back into fashion. But for me, it was really the dial and the fact that, guilloche is a craft where you have what we call a rose engine, and you have a master craftsman sitting there turning for hours on end just to create the patterns, starting from the outside, I believe, and then going inwards to varying degrees of fineness, and brass rosettes that dictate the pattern that's being carved into the dial. With the perception, that's suddenly made a craft that seemed very much out of reach completely accessible. I jumped at the opportunity. I waited almost a year for it, actually. Adding that to the collection was, at that point, I think felt like, oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. That's me done. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but
famous last words.
This was and will remain a special piece as the beginning of that journey, really. And also, 6 long years in academia. This marked the end of it. And actually, on the custom strap that I had, so I majored in English literature, both my bachelor's and my master's. And that's a quote from Samuel Beckett, one of the authors that I used in my final thesis, immortalized on the strap.
Oh, that's beautiful. So what does it say?
It says, "I scissored into slender strips the wings of butterflies."
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I can't talk about my collection without talking about this piece for sure.
So this obviously led to something more for you.
So I said I waited a year for this. I think somewhere along the way within that year, actually. I think I started working for the brand even before I received my watch. And I run the content for the brand. And, I think today there's a special little piece that I've kind of brought along with me, mainly because some of the Perth collectors really wanted to see it. This is a sort of an unreleased prototype. The final watch will be quite different from what you see here. And actually it'll be kind of split into 2 different watches because we'll be releasing the dial in one configuration without saying too much. But I think what's really special about this piece is the case and bracelet and the construction. I think this will mark a really big step up for the brand with the release of a watch in this material, because this material is tantalum.
It's very heavy.
Yeah, it's one of the densest, I think, materials or metals on Earth, and actually one of the rarest as well. To date, I think almost no brand has actually been willing to commit to producing watches in full tantalum in a volume of greater than 1. We're kind of taking this to an extreme, I think, by releasing a full tantalum watch that will be, ready to purchase for anybody. And we're hoping, I think, to be able to announce it at the end of the year or at the beginning of 25 at the latest. But yeah, I mean, the material itself is really special because of, number one, its density and also its hardness. It's a strange combination because usually, when you talk about your traditional precious metals, gold, platinum, they tend to be a bit on the softer side. Tantalum is actually harder than titanium. Okay. So it's really, really difficult to work with, and that's why very few brands are willing to work with them. We spent a long time getting to this stage in terms of the finishing. We showcased this for the first time in Geneva in April at Watches and Wonders, and it drew quite a bit of attention, I will say. I think we're almost definitely going to be the first brand to release it, and it will become part of our permanent collection, I think, next year.
So working for an up-and-coming independent brand, how has that shaped or influenced your collecting journey to this date?
I mean, I think it's given me a lot of insight into what really goes on behind the scenes of operating a brand. The months of design reiteration, the R&D that has to go into it, the sort of tolerances that you have to work with. And I think especially for Atelier Wen, because we're working with craft, it's almost a contradiction between the two aspects of it, right? Because watchmaking is all about precision. It's all about fine tolerances. It's all about fitting things exactly. On the flip side, this sort of handmade object that can never be perfect. And you have to integrate that into something that's meant to only work when it's fit together perfectly. Yeah. It's made me a lot more sensitive, I will say, to the nuances of design. You look at a case and how you sort of layer that case really impacts how it wears on your wrist, how it looks, how it sits. And, those are sort of aspects of watchmaking wear that maybe I was sort of aware of on the periphery. Okay. But since then, it's really kind of taken front and center when I look at, watches that I hope to add to the collection or take an interest in.
Thank you, Ignatius. It was an absolute pleasure to have you in Perth and all the way from Singapore. And guys, please tell us what's in your 3D watch collection. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, be sure to check out our other content Help us out by hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss out on the next free watch collection.